So with that, I'd like you to please welcome the mayor of Litchfield Park, Mayor Schoaf.
Thank you very much. I appreciate being given the opportunity to come here and talk to you a little bit about the city of Litchfield Park. It is a very important part of my life, and so it's fun. It's always fun to come and talk about it.
Great.
So I'm happy to be here.
Thank you. Let's get started. First of all, let's start with, tell us a little bit about yourself. What made you decide to run for mayor? And then once you became mayor, what's your favorite part about being a mayor?
Well, I grew up in Southern California, and I went to school in the Midwest. And after a bunch of school, I became an attorney and actually came to Phoenix to practice law with my wife and my first son. After a couple of years, we had a family emergency that took us back to the Midwest. And so I moved my practice back to the Midwest. Ended up representing a company that had a manufacturing plant in Goodyear, Arizona. So through that representation, I became familiar with Litchfield Park because the person who owned the company lived in Litchfield Park. And I thought, what a cool place, literally, to raise a family. So over a period of years, I had an opportunity to buy that company and become its president. And it was a small company. I thought, this would be a great opportunity because I can move my family to Litchfield, and it'll be a great place for them to grow up, and it'll be a good place. So I became president of this company, purchased it and became president, and operated it through about 2010, I guess, when the recessions hit and a variety of things moved manufacturing companies basically to China. I had an opportunity to go to Mexico and didn't want to go to Mexico, so I switched back to being an attorney again in about 2010. In get the dates right, I'm old enough now that it literally is hard to remember dates. I just kind of got to place them in decades. I'm pretty good with decades. So about 1986, there was a thing. How many in here know about strip annexation? Has anybody been here long enough to know about strip annexation? Well, we were a county. Litchfield Park was an unincorporated area of the county that had been started by Paul Litchfield. And the city of Goodyear and the city of Avondale and the city of Glendale and the city of Phoenix, everybody was doing strip annexation where they kept putting strips out. And eventually we ended up with strips that pretty much encircled Litchfield Park. So we became concerned, a lot of us within the city became concerned, how do we protect our little jewel here? We don't really want to be in any of these cities. So in about '86, we went out and actually incorporated our little city. So we incorporated about 1986, and I was involved in that. And I was appointed to the very first council in the city of Litchfield Park. So the council was appointed to start out with when you're a new incorporation, you get appointed by the county supervisor. So there were 7 of us on the council. And for about a year, maybe a little more than a year, we sat down and we actually did all the initial work to create the city. We drafted all the initial ordinances, we set up the budget plan, we tried to figure out how do we make this sustainable. It was an incredibly cool experience to give birth to the city. When I got done with that, I did not run for the first council and said, I've had enough of this, it's been fun in politics, I'm gonna go back to work in my business. And I did for maybe 18 years. So sometime in the early 2000s, the city became embroiled in the issue of fire protection. How should we provide fire protection? And the way that, for those who don't know this, the way that the law in Arizona is set up is that a city does not have responsibility to provide fire and emergency services. There's no responsibility to provide fire and emergency services. You have to provide police protection, but not fire service. So Litchfield Park had never provided fire service. Our residents got fire protection from Rural Metro by private contract, and if they didn't contract, Rural Metro would go to their house and then put out a fire or pick them up in an ambulance and charge them for it. So that really was a very poor solution for the residents because there was only one fire truck from Rural Metro for the entire west side. So if that fire truck was busy and you had a fire, or more importantly, if you had a heart attack, you were really, SOL, because that truck's gone and there's not a lot to be done about it. So we needed to do something, but the solution that the mayor was really behind was to have our own fire company, our own fire station. And it was so expensive that it literally would have put us out of business. We couldn't be sustainable as a city because we didn't have enough people. So that's what got me involved. I ended up running for mayor because of that issue, ended up finding a way to solve the problem that didn't involve us having our own fire station. And got 12 years later, here I am. So.
Great. And what's your favorite part about being mayor?
You know, that's the hardest part of the question. I think the favorite part is actually seeing, in a small city, you have the ability to get an idea or to have a problem and have a way to figure out a way to solve that problem, and you can really see the solution. So when we do something in Litchfield Park, when the council does something, it's behind an idea or a concept, and we create something, we see it, and we see it every day because our city's small enough that we literally, in many cases, we may drive by it every day. So I think that's probably the favorite part.
That's terrific, yes.
Yeah.
So most people think of Litchfield Park as being the wigwam, or they think about it stretching all the way out to Verrado because of the zip codes. So I thought it'd be nice if you could tell us what the actual boundaries of Litchfield Park, the city, are, so that we can see that and understand that. And Carl's going to bring over the white pad so that you can draw that out for us.
You know, the white pad will be very helpful. I actually sat down and wrote it out. And my background, I'm an engineer, and so when I write things out, I write them out like a surveyor. So I wrote out the metes and bounds around the city, and you never would understand it. So unless you're a surveyor. If you're a surveyor, it would all be obvious to you. I want to tell you why it's so difficult, and then I'll draw it for you. How many people in here think the post office, the Litchfield Park post office, is in the city of Litchfield Park? Raise your hand. Okay. Don't know, right? It's actually not. It's in the city of Avondale. It used to be in the city of Litchfield Park, but then it got moved into the city of Avondale. But it's the city of Litchfield Parks. It's our zip code. So let me show you what, I'll try to show this to you, and then this will be a test of my memory, which for an old guy sometimes is difficult. That's not going to work. Okay, so we're going to start with, this is Litchfield Road. And it actually has a little turn in it like that, as you know. And this is Dysart. And this is the end of the whiteboard. That's El Mirage. This is Indian School Road. And this is Wigwam. So that's Wigwam Boulevard. This is Indian School. And this is Dysart. Okay, this is Camelback. And this is Missouri. Okay. So we'll start on this corner of Missouri and Litchfield Road. Okay, we go over a quarter mile or so and come down to Camelback. We go this way about a quarter mile and come down to Camelback. So we have this little square up north of Camelback that's centered on Litchfield Road that's about a quarter mile either direction. This is La Loma. Everybody knows where the Hill is and where Sun Health has their thing. And this is the New Fry's Marketplace. This is Richmond American and Mattamy. Okay? Then we go down here, and we go down this way, and we go this way, and we go down here. This is about Bullard Wash. It's approximately, the dividing line is between the, would be the greens, the Litchfield Park greens, and then whatever's on the other side. I don't know if it's Mattamy or, it must be Palm Valley, it's on the other side. There's kind of a wash that goes down through here. There's kind of a retention basin, the wash area. And down here is Millennium High School. Millennium is in Goodyear, but our property line runs right, our boundary runs right down next to Millennium. It gets to Wigwam, and it goes this way until it gets to Litchfield Road, and then it goes south to where Litchfield Road goes into Indian School. Then it goes this way up Indian School until it gets to Dysart. When it gets, I'm sorry, when it gets to Dysart and Wigwam, Indian School actually becomes Wigwam eventually here. It keeps going up Dysart to Camelback. At this point, well, then we have, let's see, the Wigwam, this Wigwam, when it becomes Indian School, this area here, about a quarter mile again, is Albertsons. That's, the Albertsons Shopping Center is in the city. So it sticks out that way. Then we go down Camelback. This southwest corner, where the Burger King is, just got put in, that's in Litchfield Park. Okay. Now Litchfield Park also has a strip up here, so we have a strip of land that goes there, and we have a strip that goes all the way around Wigwam Creek, south. But they're not in Litchfield Park. Okay? So that, trying to describe that obviously is very, very confusing. If you add all this up, it's about 3.5 square miles. Everybody refers to Litchfield Park, and we actually go through this with the newspaper a lot, where there will be a crime in Litchfield Park. And the crime is actually somewhere in the county, out towards Jackrabbit, or it's somewhere up by where Carl lives, and they still refer to it as Litchfield Park because it's in our zip code. Our zip code is huge. I mean, it goes pretty much from the Albert Freer River over to Jackrabbit, from, I don't know, Glendale probably down to the freeway. We have been trying for years to get the post office to change that, to let us have our own post office. We'll put it back in the city, keep our zip code 85340, and just have it within our city. And the post office laughs at us every time and says, you know, not just no, but hell no, stamp on it, throw it back at us. So we haven't been able to fix that. So that's kind of the city right there.
Great, thank you. So Litchfield was founded as a cotton producing entity for this little company called Goodyear Tire and Rubber. And Paul Litchfield, which the mayor referred to earlier, he was the representative from Goodyear who came out in about 1916 to go find cotton availability. And eventually the Litchfields built their summer house here in Arizona in what is today, not as it looks like today, but in that same location as became known as the Wigwam Resort. So the question for us is, with the Wigwam and Litchfield Park being the same for so long, essentially, what is the relationship between the Wigwam Resort and the city today?
We have a very strong, close, symbiotic kind of relationship with the resort. Excuse me. Many of our residents are members of the country club and use the facilities at the resort on an everyday or certainly every week basis, between the golf courts, the tennis courts, the spa, the pools, the restaurants, the bars. I mean, it is a central part of life in Litchfield Park, and it's one of the things that makes Litchfield interesting and a really fun place to live, because we have a tremendous pathway system, and everybody has a golf cart or a bicycle, and so you're able to take your golf cart or your bicycle over to the Wigwam, and enjoy it, and then take it back home. So it's just a very integral part of our community. We also use it for a variety of things that are part of our special events. Special events are very, very central to life in Litchfield Park. We have about a dozen special events a year that are significant. Some of those special events are operated by the Wigwam, or some of them are done in conjunction with the Wigwam, like Oktoberfest is an example, where literally the front lawn of the Wigwam will get filled up with 1,000 people or more, drinking beer and eating brats. Mm-hmm. So that's a joint event between the city and the Wigwam, or the Christmas celebration, where we do a tree lighting celebration. So there's a whole variety of events like that throughout the year that are part of the process between both the city and the resort. So it's a very close relationship.
And if you sell homes in that area, you'll notice that some of the new home builders now, as part of their incentives for buyers, are saying, we will give you, when you close on a house here, a 1-year membership to the Wigwam. It's such a part of even selling a house. Even a new home builder is including that. It's a terrific thing. So how is the history of Litchfield Park influenced the city as we see it today?
Paul Litchfield was a really, really interesting person. He was a chemist and eventually became president of Goodyear Tire and Rubber Company. And the closest thing you could think of for him today would be somebody like Steve Jobs. He was definitely an entrepreneur. Goodyear, at the time that he became involved in it, was a very small little startup company that obviously became a worldwide tremendous economic power. And he was responsible for a lot of that. So his kind of project, one of the things he was interested in was this concept of what was called a new town. And the concept of it was that you would build a place that you would live, work, and play. That the businesses and the homes and your recreational facilities would all be within walking or biking distance. You'd have a very active pathway system that would link everything together. And residents would look at their town as really the center of everything about their life. Everything would be centered around this town. Their family would, all their activities would be in the town. So Litchfield Park was started as the first village. The way that he looked at it was that within a town you would have a number of villages. And Litchfield Park was the first village within this concept that was going to be built literally between Camelback Road and the freeway and the Agua Fria River and not quite all the way to Jackrabbit.
Wow.
I'm not sure what, maybe Cerebral. But it was several thousand acres was going to be this town, and it was going to be comprised of all these villages. So, and that actually was still the concept when Litchfield Park was incorporated. It was our goal to build that out, literally to build a number of villages just like Litchfield in that general area. And the thing that prevented us from doing that was strips. At the time, that property was still, it had been owned by Goodyear, but because of some issues, they ended up selling it to Suncor, which was really APS. But APS was behind the concept of doing this, and so we were going to build that out. That ended up not being possible because all these strips, we couldn't get the strips broken, and so we couldn't get any bigger. So the vision of having Litchfield Park as this village has still the vision that we have on the council today. We can't provide all the places for people to work that live in Litchfield Park, but we can provide a place in Litchfield Park that's tied together with pathways and which is able to offer everything you need to live and to play. And we obviously encourage our residents, and many of our residents work within a very short distance of Litchfield Park. They work on the west side, so that the lifestyle in Litchfield Park is still very much tied to this concept of the new town, to where you try to center your life around this area where you live in, and so it's still the vision today.
That's great. So your city is so unique, and it's got the charm, it's got the character, it's got a small size so that you do have that village feel, and it's got amenities, and it's got that major resort right in the middle of it. So what is your vision, your overall vision for Litchfield Park, say, in the next 5 to 10 years, but also in the next 50 years?
We have a number of challenges that we are working on to solve. Some of the challenges are private challenges, and the residents are working on it, and you can think of that in terms of housing. We have some of our houses that date back to the 50s probably, certainly into the 60s, and some of those houses, they're getting a little long in the tooth. So there's a tremendous number of homes that are being rebuilt throughout the city, and we're very unusual in that we have housing stock that goes from small condominiums or small apartment type living up through a 14,000 square foot house. So I mean, literally everything in between that. We have homes that routinely sell for $1 million and get knocked down, and another house is built on the property where they've just paid $700,000 for it. And we also have homes in the smaller areas where it's a smaller home where people are going in and refurbishing it and totally rebuilding the home. So that's the first challenge, is we need to have that continue. We need to encourage that. We need to see our housing stock turn over and it be purchased by people who want to bring in families and live in Litchfield Park long term, and they will commit to investing in the home and making it better. So that's number one. Number two, we are, as you saw from the picture, we're small, and there's only so many areas within that small footprint that are left for building. We still have a couple of housing developments that are building out. We have some commercial areas that are going to build out, but it is a finite amount of things that are going to be built in Litchfield Park. So the portion of our budget that is based upon construction sales tax is not going to continue 20 years from now. It probably isn't going to continue 10 years from now. So we have to make certain that we make the city financially sustainable by replacing that income stream with something else, which for us is most likely a retail sales tax, because the citizens are very much opposed to having property taxes. So that's challenge number two, is we have to make sure that we guide the build out in a way that generates retail sales tax that will replace that construction sales tax component of our budget. Then the third thing is the hardest part of all, and that is there's a concept in science that says basically everything goes to chaos. And it's a concept that's true in our lives throughout everything we do in our lives. Nothing ever stays the same. If you try to make something stay the same, it's going to die. Either it gets worse or it gets better. So the challenge for us is, how do we keep Litchfield Park the same? And that's very difficult, particularly when we want to see the area around City Hall develop as a city center that can generate retail sales tax. We want to see the Wigwam, become stronger and have more activity at the Wigwam. But we have to do that in the context of protecting our neighborhoods. How do we keep the lifestyle that everybody came to Litchfield Park? How do we keep that lifestyle in the neighborhoods when we have more economic activity going on within the boundaries? So that's our third challenge, and that's what we're working on.
You have a very well-educated population, third highest income in the state. So can you describe your typical resident? What type of occupations, what type of activities do they enjoy? What type of civic engagement?
Our typical resident is 70 years old, 50 years old, or 30 years old. And you say, well, how can it be? No, it's not like, you can't look at residents and say, well, our median age is 48 years, because that doesn't mean anything. We literally have 3 distinct populations that live in our little city. The thing that's most interesting is that in many cases, those 3 individuals are related by family. So in my case, I have kids and grandkids that live in Litchfield Park. And I'm not unusual. We have a lot of people who raise their kids in Litchfield Park. They're now getting ready to retire, or they are retired, and their kids are coming back and bringing their kids. So it's a very unusual demographic situation. We have a variety of economic, we're a small city. We have about 6,000 people, 3.5 square miles. But we have people that make $10 million a year that live in Litchfield Park. And we have people who probably make $25,000 a year. It's that huge spread in incomes. And we have people who are plumbers and people who work on air conditioning systems. We have attorneys, we have farmers, we have various professional people. So it's a huge mix of personalities and backgrounds, and in a very small little population. So it leads to a very interesting place to live.
So when your residents get together to do something, whether it's to ask for a change at the city council level or it's an event that the city is trying to work on, you have all these different types of people, different personalities. That's got to be a different dynamic than most of us are familiar with in a city working together. It's more like actually family and cousins type of relationships.
Kind of down south.
How does that work? Yeah. How do you manage to negotiate that type of, which is good, closeness, but at the same time it can probably flare up some emotions too?
I think the thing is that everybody, not everybody, but people who particularly who are active in some of the things that you might be referring to, all kind of share a common vision of what do we want from Litchfield Park? What do we get from Litchfield Park? And that common vision transcends, do we support Donald Trump, or do we support Anna Tovar or whoever. I mean, it doesn't matter if you're Republican or Democrat particularly, but what matters is do you understand the vision of Litchfield Park, and are you willing to work for that vision? And we have a very active civic engagement, and we are, for the small size, and I'm probably going to get this wrong, I have to try to count, but we have 3 really, really active churches inside our little city. And we have several more churches that are right on our boundaries that our members go to. So we have, our city supports multiple active churches, and people are very active in their churches. We have Rotary clubs, we have Kiwanis clubs, we have groups like the Homeless Youth Association, New Life Shelter. There's a new Senior Meals on Wheels that actually, they trace their origins to our residents or people who are somehow related to our city. So we're tremendously involved in a variety of civic kinds of activities to help other people. We have a very active membership in the chamber. We have active people. People are very active in city government. For those who don't know this, everybody in city government, everybody that's on the not working for the city in terms of staff, but everybody on the city council, everybody on our commissions, everybody is a volunteer. So nobody gets paid to work for Litchfield Park other than our staff. So it is all about giving back to your community so that you are able to get from the community what you want.
Great, which is why you have that nice feel to it that people
Exactly.
like. It's great. Can you give us, you sort of alluded to it when you were drawing out the boundaries, can you give us an update on some of the new projects that maybe we don't see? We see the fries, but there's some new projects when I was reading through some of your information for economic development that might be coming or that you're trying to start up.
Well, we have several areas of active economic development or active development efforts. The fries is a good example of one that's now completed and is up and is operational. An interesting part of fries that just might, I'd say it might be interesting to all of you. The development company that came in to do fries came in and said, we want, that parcel was originally 40 acres and it was zoned commercial. And they said, we'll come in and we'll build this fries marketplace, but we only want 25 acres. We can't do 40 acres. So you got to have, the other 15 acres has to go to residential so that, because we don't want vacant land on the other side, on the other side of our fries store. We want homes there because we can't use it for commercial. So we went kicking and screaming down that path because we didn't want to convert all of that other 15 acres to residential because residential costs us money and commercial makes us money. So, but we eventually did because we thought fries was such a unique opportunity for us and such a unique store and we'd be such a tremendous generator of sales tax. So we said, okay, fine. And so we changed it to about 25 acres for commercial and the rest residential. And the residential got started and got sold. And by the time the developer got it all planned out in terms of all the pads were sold immediately. And so they said, we really screwed up because we could have made this 10 more acres easily, 5 more acres easily, and sold it all out immediately, and we should have done that. Mm-hmm. So there's tremendous, what I'm saying to you is that if you look at the demographics of the area and when developers look at it and they say, well, where will these businesses want to go? And they say, well, there's got to be so many bodies within a mile or 2.5 miles or 5 miles. And they draw these circles and they look at demographics, how many people live here, how many people work here. All those things work really well in general. It becomes really difficult when you have an area like Litchfield because we have in our north and to the west, obviously, we have a black hole called Luke Air Force Base. So nobody lives there. I mean, a lot of people live there, but they don't get counted as residents. Obviously, nobody lives on the runway. So our demographics get really skewed when you start looking at these circles, these concentric circles. And those circles don't exactly tell what's really true about how many people will come there. If you look at the west side, one of the things that we don't have is a lot of good businesses to go to, particularly in our area around Litchfield Park. So when you get away from the freeway, you start having a tremendous amount of people who will go to things like a Fry's or an Ace Hardware store or Payway or Starbucks because there's nothing near them. So they'll drive a little bit further to get there. So what that's doing is it's helping us fill in some of these areas, like these little funny areas, the areas where the Burger King is going on El Mirage and Camelback. I looked at that and said, well, who's going to want to build, a Burger King on El Mirage and Camelback? That seems insane to me. And so I talked to the owner about it, and he said, we have a Burger King. This guy owns a bunch of Burger Kings. He says, we have a Burger King that's on El Mirage, and I think it's Northern. And literally there's nothing around it. He says, that's one of my best stores. People come there because they want to come to my place, and there's not a lot of places around it. He says, this store is going to do wonderful. He says, you watch, it'll be good. So as soon as I got the Burger King announced, then now we got a collision store going in and a body shop. I don't know, 2 more businesses going in right next door to it. So I'm sure that area down there around Dysart and El Mirage and Camelback is going to fill in, even though it's across the street from a big hole in the ground where they do rock quarry mining. Okay, the demographics got to be terrible. I mean, if you draw a mile away from those stores, if you go a mile to the east, there's nothing. There's a rock quarry and the Agua Fria River, at least for the next mile. So there's 0 people, and yet those businesses will do just fine. So we have economic activity going on in that little corner with different businesses. It's zoned as kind of a commercial industrial area. There's a lot of opportunity to put things in there, and the landowner is Luke. I'm sure everybody knows Luke Land. They own that corner, and they're very active at bringing people in there, and I'm sure there'll be opportunities for businesses to go in there. The land that's at Dysart and Camelback, there's a corner. It's the southeast corner of Dysart and Camelback is vacant, but in that spot, within the next year, what you're going to see is a Dignity Health freestanding ER. They've been working on it for a couple years, but the group that Dignity is working with went through a bankruptcy and had to be reorganized. So now they're back on a faster track, and they're getting ready to build an ER on the corner. There's an AutoZone store going in, and then there's a fairly large development of luxury mini warehouses going in, kind of in the back corner, where all the units are air conditioned and it's all secure, really highly secured, really nice development. So again, that parcel now, it's, I don't know, 15, 16 acres, maybe 17 acres, and probably half of it is now committed to uses, and the other half will be, it's available. There are pads going in there, so there'll be activity. You see a lot of activity, I think, on Dysart and Camelback. And then in the downtown area.
Wave your hands.
Well, let's see. Yeah.
There you go. Thank you.
I know this is boring, but I didn't think I'd put everybody to sleep like that.
No, it's not boring. They're captivated.
So the central area for us in terms of what we're working on in the city is the area around City Hall. So Wigwam Boulevard and Litchfield Road, the area that's on the east side of Litchfield Road, all of that land used to be owned by, and it's been a couple different landowners, but it kind of traces its ownership back to the Wigwam, and eventually from the Wigwam to Cabuto, and so the city, that land is obviously crucial to the city. We do not want to see Burger Kings going into that property, or a CVS, or any of those kinds of businesses. So it's a very difficult problem for a city when we have a vision for what we would like to see there, but we have to have a landowner who has the same vision, or it becomes a real problem. I mean, number one, philosophically, I don't support the idea of governments taking over private property. I don't think government, except in very unusual circumstances, should be taking somebody's property. So you're challenged with how do you work with the landowner so that we get something that the landowner's happy with and the city and its residents are happy with. Very difficult. So we took a shortcut. We bought the property. So the city actually purchased all the vacant land that's on the east side of Litchfield Road. We purchased all of it. So now we are the landowner, and so we can decide what goes there, and we can take our time. We don't have to develop it quickly. We're not trying to make a huge profit on the land. What we're trying to do is build something that will be really beneficial for the residents. We talked earlier about sales tax. We want it to be able to generate sales tax for us, so it makes it sustainable. But we don't need that to happen tomorrow. So we're planning that area now. That's, again, it's Wigwam and Litchfield Road to the north and east. We're planning all that area, and there will be a variety of local kinds of businesses go in there in terms of restaurants. Arizona chain restaurants possibly. So it may not be a restaurant where there's only one of them, but it might be something like Times Square that went in up by Fry's, something like that, where it's a locally owned small group of restaurants. There'll be office buildings. We've got a few professional people that would like to come in and have a nice office up in that area. There may be some condos in that area for residential. So it's going to be we're planning the development of that right now. And then on the other side of Litchfield Road, that 15 acres is owned by JDM, who owns the Wigwam, and we're hoping to see them do something with it. So that's those two areas. I think there will be a tremendous there'll be a large amount of building going on those areas over the next 2 or 3 years. It's assuming that the economy doesn't get too stupid.
Great. We are going to take a quick little 7-minute break. At the break, you want to start off by answering your 3x5 card questions?
Well, we can do that. The first question was about water. Do we have any concerns about water long term, and what are the water sources? We are unique in that, for the most part, we contract services. So whereas the city of Avondale or the city of Goodyear, most cities have a water department, and they have to worry about where is the water going to come, to supply the residents. We contract our water with Liberty Utilities, Liberty Water, and it traces back to Goodyear basically. And when they originally started developing this area, they set up a private water company. So we have a private water company, and that water company deals with the issues of water for us. We have the good fortune of Liberty having a tremendous source of groundwater that has been very consistent over the years, and it does not appear to be any kind of an issue for us long term. Fortunately, water tends to flow from the north to the southwest, so it flows right through the aquifers that feed Litchfield Park, and we're in very good shape for water. So we don't have long-term concerns for it. As a city, we have the same concerns that every resident in Arizona has concerning water long-term for our state. One of the unfortunate things is that as a state, we don't always have the best policies that end up being set for our state, and sometimes that's related to the fact that we don't have the best people who are working in government for our state. So we have a tremendous problem with water coming up across the entire state. Obviously we're getting less rain, and that's the prediction is that this year the systems of lakes and dams that's across the west, so more than just Arizona, but include California and Nevada and Utah and New Mexico, Colorado to some extent. The prediction is that mid-September of this year, that system will be at only 50% full, which is the lowest it's ever been in the history of that whole system. So if this drought continues and that system continues to be drained of the water that's in that part of our water system, it's going to lead to tremendous problems for everybody across the West. So it is a problem that we're all going to have to deal with. We're going to deal with it in different ways. And so while we as a city are not particularly concerned about will our residents have water, we are concerned that will Arizona have the water it needs. We have, again, a lot of places in Arizona where the groundwater they depend on groundwater, and groundwater is going down at a tremendous rate. We have areas in Arizona where in the Maricopa area, we're all governed by a very active water management law that prevents certain uses of groundwater, prevents drilling new wells to take more groundwater. It's an active management area is what they call it. But if you go up to an area like Kingman isn't part of that system. So the development that's going on around Kingman, literally, they're having trouble finding water. They can't drill deep enough almost to get water. So it's a problem that's going to be hitting us, and we're going to hear more and more about it as we go forward. Second question is, why is there a wall around the old Litchfield Park? Well, you build a wall because you want people to stay in or you want people to stay out. Seriously, if you look at walls, there are walls around almost every of one of our subdivisions. People, when they build a subdivision, they build a wall around it. And it kind of delineates, so this is my subdivision and that's your subdivision, and so it's a delineation feature. There actually is pretty much a wall around almost all of Litchfield Park. I mean, there's a wall around the old part, but there's also walls around the greens, and there's walls in the villages. I mean, it's just, some of the walls are there because they are what people did to delineate this was kind of our area. Now, and I think that's all it is now. I mean, we want all of you to come to Litchfield Park and spend your money because we need your sales tax revenue. We want you to come and buy houses. Everybody's welcome. But there is a psychological thing about the wall around the old part of Litchfield Park, because we refer to it as being, you live in the wall, inside the wall. And inside the wall it's slightly different than living outside the wall. The community is slightly different, the atmosphere, but amongst the families that live in the neighborhoods is slightly different. It's not that it's bad in any other part, but it's just slightly different in the old part of Litchfield Park. So the wall becomes kind of a psychological thing that lets one part of Litchfield Park delineate itself from another part of Litchfield Park, and that, as mayor, I don't take part in that. Although I live in the old part.
In 2014, the Fiscal Impact Development Report was put out, and there was an article cited in that from the Wall Street Journal that discussed the concerns when a city has a lot of residential development, very little commercial development, and its dependence on sales tax for revenue. The concerns revolved around the infrastructure, the services, for needing a reliable, ongoing revenue source, which you're sort of already alluding to your concerns about that. So how has the city addressed those concerns? You've talked about you're considering ways going forward because you know that some of that commercial is going to be limited. What ideas have been floated, or are you thinking about, or when you think about that question, what is that report?
Well, I'm very active in a group called the Maricopa Association of Governments, MAG. And MAG is, of all the different assets we have in Maricopa County, MAG is one of the best assets that we have as cities, as counties, and literally as residents. We have some tremendous staff people at MAG. And so while this report came out from the Wall Street Journal that talks about this general problem of the cost of having a residence versus the cost of having a business or the cost of having office space, at MAG, we took that idea really before this came out, I think, in the Wall Street Journal, and we have our own demographic modelers and our own mathematician people down there that can write computer programs that are tremendous. And we go through and we've actually modeled what is a residence cost per year, and we look at things like what is the cash flow that comes from the state, what is the impact of sales tax revenue, what's the cost of fire and police, emergency services, whatever. So we take that factors into account, and we look at it. MAG has a model that looks at it within a generic description of a city. So for Litchfield Park, I can look at the MAG model, and I can look at Litchfield Park. So if a new resident comes in, if we build one house, what's that going to cost the city over the course of a year? If we build a retail store that's this kind of this amount of money per square foot sales, what will that benefit the city? So we can get a very good idea of what it costs when we look at the difference between putting in a residence versus putting in an office building or putting in a retail operation. Unfortunately, that model is again, we talked about Litchfield Park and how it's not what I might think of, it's not the whole zip code, and this model basically is kind of like the zip code. So we actually are working with MAG right now to take that model and bring it down to Litchfield Park as an individual little entity. And the reason we're doing that is because of this work that's going on in this area that's in the downtown area, whether it's the city center property or the JDM property. We want to know what mix of uses of this property do we have to have so that we can generate income off of the property. So if we have, 1,000 residential units and we have, 100,000 square foot of retail and we have 50,000 square foot of office, okay, we want to be able to go in and put that in a model that will tell us on average, this is what the financial result of that will be. So we can, number one, plan out the uses, because long term we need to have a positive financial benefit from this development. And then secondly, when we get asked questions, there's a question that's coming to the council. It's going to be filed by JDM in the next couple weeks. Right now, the property that is to the west of Litchfield Road that JDM owns has a general plan designation, and I believe maybe also a zoning designation, where they can use it for mixed use, meaning they can have residential and commercial, but the commercial is 75,000 square feet minimum. Okay, so you have to have at least 75,000 square feet before you can do any residential there. Those numbers were put together based on the MAG model so that we would make sure that property would be, at worst, it would sustain itself, but at best, it would actually provide some benefit to the city. Well, JDM wants to change that now to 10,000 square foot is what we've been told, 10,000 square feet of commercial. We want to be able to actually sit down and calculate exactly how much money is that going to cost the city, so that when we sit down and look at that request, we have some objective, data-driven information, so we can make a data-driven decision. We can say this is not a good thing for the city because it's going to cost X amount of dollars. So we're in the process of building that model right now, and it is something that will guide the development of the remainder of the open space in Litchfield Park.
And MAG is a tremendous resource, as the mayor said. If you go onto WeMARGAD.org, a lot of the maps that I have there, they are the MAG maps. They link directly to MAG because it's such a wealth of information. So if you ever get a chance to just go to MAG's site, you will get lost in all the information, and they help you and other cities all throughout the West Valley.
It literally is amazing, and the data is available to anybody in here who wants it. If you call up down at MAG, you can talk to the people at MAG, and they can get you information that you can't even believe. It all got started actually when we had the housing bust. We actually sat down there. We get data that comes in from all this. We get tremendous amounts of data because we get all the trip reduction data that people do. All that trip reduction data comes to MAG. We get all the data about home sales. We get all the data about foreclosures. We get so much data you just can't even imagine. And it was all a repository. And we started realizing in 2009 that we had, I think it was 60,000 homes that were in foreclosure. If you try to put your minder on this, it was unbelievable. And so we said, we've got to start understanding this. So we actually hired a modeler, and we started taking some of the data that we had down there and putting it into maps so we could see it. And so we developed a map originally. The first map was developed to see where are these foreclosed homes? Where is this distressed areas in the city? And we had, it was all of the distressed areas were in red and other areas were in, green or other colors, but we could see the neighborhoods that were being literally decimated by foreclosures. And then we started taking that data and coupling it with trip reduction data. And so we actually, like a town of Surprise, city of Surprise, we can see hour by hour the outflow of people from Surprise, leaving Surprise and going, and we know where they're going. We can see it and we map it. We actually can map the people leaving Surprise and going to work in Deer Valley or going to work in Mesa or going to work downtown. And all this is available. It's all available to anybody in here who wants to see it. So it will give you tremendous information about as you work with your people who are buying property or putting in businesses to get an idea of where are the people, where are the foreclosures, where are the distressed areas, where are people going during the day, where are they coming back at night. You can see all of that, and it's all in these interactive maps available at MAG.
And that trip tool is really helpful if you're in commercial and you have a business who wants to locate and I don't think the West Valley has any workers. Well, yeah, they do. They just all leave at 5 o'clock in the morning and come back at 5 o'clock at night. So that tool has been used by other entities as well. But if you're in commercial real estate, it's very valuable.
What's the website?
MAG, it's Maricopa Association of Governments. And just if you Google Maricopa Association of Governments, it'll pop right up.
You'll find it.
So one of the concerns that was part of a MAG study was that one-time construction fee when you have the commercial properties being built. So can you just, and their concern was that some cities were using it for operational uses. And obviously, once things stop being built, either to the same degree or at all, then your operations are in trouble. So can you tell us what Litchfield Park's view of those one-time construction fees are? What do you do with those?
And we track our budget very closely. I mean, literally every month. And we look at what's our operating expenses, what's our capital expenses, what's our income from things that are renewable, that are not construction related, and what's construction sales tax. So we look at it every month. We don't spend construction sales tax dollars on operations. We spend construction sales tax dollars on things like buying the city property downtown. We spend it on major capital improvements that are going to last, 10 or 20 or 30 years. So if it's a significant road project, we just rebuilt the wall around about 30% of our lake. So we spent a huge amount of money on that. So those kinds of funds are things that fund that kind of activity. Our construction sales tax dollars where we know that they're going to go away. And obviously we're working to replace them long term. So we're very aware of the problem, and it's something that it will not negatively impact us unless we can't replace them.
Okay. So we've looked at the commercial projects that are outside of the old Litchfield Park, and the mayor has given us some idea about those projects and some of the revenue. Are there any other additional revenue sources that you're looking at, or ones that you were able to mention so far on the commercial side of the fence?
No, there's really only one other area that is going to get developed, significant area that's going to get developed inside the city, and that's the Loma, and it's owned by Sun Health. And we don't know, and I don't think Sun Health knows what they're going to be able to do, what they're going to do with that property. The property was originally given to Sun Health by the Denny family, who was the descendants of Paul Litchfield, and it is restricted to be used in a way that benefits the public. So Sun Health's original concept was to put into that property a larger retirement community. I think they're called CCRCs, community something, I don't know, where it's like a living environment where you can go from independent living to assisted living to nursing homes, and you kind of spend the last 20 years of your life or so in these kinds of communities. That was one of their original concepts. I think they're having some difficulties because we have so many independent/assisted living facilities that have now been built in the Southwest Valley, that the need for those, I think, has become less. And then you also have residents. The trouble, a lot of the people who would normally, you'd think, well, these would be a feeder for that kind of living environment. So you've got the Pebble Creeks and you got Litchfield Park. There's some movement that goes from Litchfield Park or Pebble Creek up to La Loma, but it isn't for independent living necessarily. If you live independently, then you tend to stay in Litchfield Park or maybe Pebble Creek because you have your friends there, your family's there, you have activities there, and you don't need to go to La Loma type deal. But when you need an assisted living, then some people go up there for assisted living, but it's a small number in relationship to how many assisted living opportunities there are across across Goodyear and Litchfield and to some extent Avondale now.
Right.
So I think competitively they're having problems. So I don't know what they're going to do with that property. It may very well get developed totally differently than what the original concept was, but it will take some time because it's going to have to go back to the family. Wave your arms.
Thank you.
You have to go back to the family to get the family to buy in to whatever use is going to be made to it.
So as a sort of additional adjunct to that, a lot of cities will put out surveys to their residents every few years, and it'll say what type of business would you like us to bring into the city. Do you do anything like that with your residents, or do your residents just come in and say, hey, here's what we'd like to see, and you sort of get a feel for it, or how do you figure out what maybe the residents are thinking?
Yeah, we have some residents that come in every day and talk to us. You'd be surprised.
I bet, yeah.
So we know what they're thinking. Probably our what happens the way we do it. We don't do a lot of surveys. But what we do is for the downtown area in this development effort is we're having a large number of public meetings.
Okay.
And so we get people who are interested, we send out all kinds of notices, and people who are interested will come and they tell us what they want. So, and it, we only have 6,000 total people, and we'll end up with at a meeting like that, we'll end up with 100 to 150 people who live in the community, and they come in and we had an initial visioning session for this downtown area. So we had some different drawings and some pieces of it. Say, well, do you like this piece, or do you like that, or do you like this concept? And we gave people like red stickers and blue stickers and green stickers. It was pretty obvious what they wanted.
Wow, that's great.
It was interesting. So, and we're continuing that process. So people have input into that in terms of what kinds of businesses would you like. Then the other side of the coin is now we have to go out and attract those kinds of businesses, and that's the more difficult part a lot of times.
Yeah, which sort of brings us to the next follow-up question was, how do you go out and find the businesses to bring in? You don't have some of the staffs that other cities have, so that means that there's probably a different methodology for you to go out and do that.
What we're doing there's different ways when you have land like we have downtown. There's different ways to go about trying to figure out, well, what are we going to build on the land. The normal process would be you would go out and you would hire a planner. You go to a group, and there's businesses that what they do is they plan things, and so you go to them and they look at the property and they look at the demographics, and maybe you have a retail consultant or not, and they draw this picture of this is how we plan it. This is our vision of the plan for this area. So now we have a plan, and then we try to execute on the plan. I've always found that to be kind of bad, because what happens is you tend to take that study and that plan and you put it in a file or on the shelf, and it kind of sits there because you don't have anybody that necessarily wants to build in that plan. So what we're doing is have a very active process where they're out talking to people who are going to use the space. And the plan that we're going to come up with, we're going to have we'll have an architectural theme that will flow through this entire development, so that when you look at it, you're going to know that it's part of this development. But we're going to have things, and we're going to have streets, obviously, once we lay the streets out, that we're not going to change the streets. But within each of the areas within the plan, it's going to be flexible. So if we find a user who wants to use this area differently than what we think, so we think this ought to be a condo unit or condos, and somebody else comes in and says, no, we really want to build an office building there, and here's what we want to build. And if they want to build it, we'll probably let them build it, unless there's some really good reason not to do it. Or we want to do this retail development over here, or so it's going to be a very flexible plan where we can put whatever the market drives. So what we're trying to do is marry this concept of we want to plan this area, and it's got to meet these overall long-term goals for our residents. So we're going to do this plan, but the plan is going to allow the market to shape that plan as we go forward within some relatively broad parameters. Wow. And we'll use our financial model so that as people come in and say, well, we want to do this here instead of what you have, we can change our financial model to say, well, if we change this model and we put this use instead of the use we had thought, what's that do to the outcome 10 years from now as this thing's built out? Will it be a benefit or not? Right. So that's how we're doing it.
Wow, that's terrific that you're so flexible. A lot of thought and work into that, so that's terrific to know. Yeah.
We'll see if it works. I don't know. I hope it works.
I say go for it. So.
Is there a height restriction that you will let get a car out?
Generally, we look at 2 stories in certain areas, but within this downtown area, we may see 3 stories in certain areas. We kind of look at it in terms of, have you heard of it's like a tent concept or an angles? So if you're on the street, you might have 1 story, but as then you get another block off of into the development, if you went to 2 stories, visually you're not going to see that it's 2 stories. And if you go further in, you could be 3 stories and not have it visually mess up things. So it'll depend a little bit on where the property's located and what's around it, and but it's 2 stories for sure, and 3 stories possibly.
Great. So lots of the cities in the West Valley work together to bring in economic development, also work together on, sometimes they'll help each other with even roadways and that type of thing. Being located where you are, I'm sure you work with Avondale and Goodyear a lot. But how do you interact with the rest of the West Valley and the cities and that overall West Valley economic development initiative that the cities seem to have coalesced around together? How do you do that?
One of the unique things about the West Valley, and this is tremendously different from the East Valley, the East Valley always has had a bit of an advantage in terms of development and for different reasons. But some of it's driven by things like the original decisions of companies like Intel to locate in the East Valley. But part of it is the fact that the East Valley, there's only really 3 or 4 entities. You got to deal with Mesa or Chandler or Gilbert, maybe a little bit with Tempe or Scottsdale, but mostly it's those 3 cities down in the southeast. And so you don't have a lot of jurisdictional issues. And on the west side, it's different. The west side, I think we have 9 or 10 different cities, some of them big, some of them small, plus the county, because we have so much county land. So the coordination of that has been very, very difficult. One of the things that we did starting literally probably 10 years ago is to start, the mayors on the west side had never ever become friends. We never met together. There literally were 2 mayors or 3 mayors, 2 mayors for sure on the west side that wouldn't even talk to one another. I mean, literally, they would not talk to one another. So you can imagine that there might have been a lack of coordination between the different cities. So we started getting everybody together for dinner. So pretty much now, every mayor on the west side, once a month, we get together for dinner and we just talk about things that are going on in the cities. We also are getting ready for the Proposition 500. The road tax on Proposition 400 is going to expire in 3 or 4 years, 5 years from now. So we have to start thinking about how do we possibly convince our residents that they should support continuing that half-cent sales tax, because it's critical to our infrastructure that we have that. If we don't have that, it's going to tremendously change our ability to rebuild our arterial roads and do the things that have to be done on the west side to support the growth that's coming out here. So how do we do that? 10 years ago, I had literally brought up the idea, why don't we all get together and have our planning and zoning people work together so that we plan all of our development on our borders. So that wherever our border is, we would work with that city and we'd work on both sides of the border so that we planned it out in a way that was consistent. And so we would know what kind of road infrastructure we needed. We need to understand from MAG, we need to understand what kind of roads do we really need to plan for. And that is driven by the uses of the property. So let's work together on planning and zoning. That went over, I mean, you can't even imagine how that fell. It was like, we would have gone right through this concrete floor. Today, it's totally different. Yeah. Today, we're driving a process now where literally all of the planning and zoning people from the west side, the staffs, which really are the people who know what's going on within the cities, all of those staff people up through the city manager are now meeting every month to lay out the uses on all the boundaries and define the transportation needs we have. And we're doing that, and what's driving the process and breaking down some of the barriers that we've had is the need for us to have a transportation plan that we can sell to the residents. So if we have a plan where we know that we're going to build this arterial road, or we're going to support this freeway project, or whatever, or this bus system, or you can think all the transportation needs, we will be able to go to our residents and talk to them about it, and talk about it across boundaries now. And so that's going to it's driving this planning, which is the first part of having a coordinated economic development effort. So we're growing into this.
Yeah. If you're interested in seeing some of the highways in particular that sales tax is scheduled to fund, if you go to WeMARGAD.org, I have a map of that, so you can see Highway 30, where's that going to run? I-11, where is that going to run? Some of the other things. And then I was just in a meeting yesterday talking about this very thing where the cities need to be able to maintain the streets, and a certain amount of that funding comes from this sales tax. So as we go forward, you're going to see the new proposition pop up on your ballot in a couple of years maybe even next year, because they're trying to get out in front of it. Let's extend it before we end it. So you'll be seeing that coming up. And in the legislature, those HERF funds have been swept year after year. And that has affected cities, it's affected highways, it's affected county roads, it's affected everybody. So one of the things you're going to see in the legislature coming up in the next legislative session is a large amount of attention put towards how do we make sure that transportation funding remains transportation funding, and we don't keep sweeping it and then putting cities and counties and the state behind the 8 ball while we still need the infrastructure to maintain or create. So look for those issues coming up, and I'll keep updating you as I know more about it. Certainly as your city comes across things, if there's things you think that our members should know, please let me know, and we will post it so that people can read about it, know about it. We'd be delighted to do that for you. So with that, we have a few more minutes. Let's try and get a couple more questions in. One of the things I'm interested in knowing, what do you think the sort of largest issue, biggest issue of concern for you is for Litchfield Park as you look at it? It can be either today's terms or it can be in future terms or both.
Our central issue is development of our downtown. I mean, without a doubt, that is the most critical thing we have today, and you know, it's going to continue for the next 5 years, 10 years. It is not a situation we can resolve today. We can't fix it today. Can't finish it today. It's, if we finish it, it'll be out many years in the future. And yet, it's really critical for doing it to get it right is just really critical if we're going to maintain this balance of the life that we have in our neighborhoods, the walkability of our community, the safety of the neighborhoods, the bike and the pathway system. Everything depends upon being able to do this right downtown, and so that's the most critical thing we have going. I mean, it's by far and away. If we get that right, then Litchfield Park will be a cool place to live for a long, long time. If we get it wrong, it'll still be a good place to live, but it won't have what it has today. So you have a website. Litchfield Park has a website. It's got a lot of good information on it. What do you think on that website are important places that realtors should be looking at, both for their own information, but also when they have clients? How do they guide their clients to information the clients may want to know? I'm probably the worst person that lives in Litchfield Park to ask about our website. Okay, I use the website for two things. I get all my agendas and all my information for council meetings off the website, and I get my email through that process. But I don't use the website, so I'm not really good at telling you what should you look at on the website. I can tell you that we just redid our website. I was involved in the original website, and we have a really good webmaster, and so they've made some changes to it to make it even better. You can find on the website almost anything you might want to know about the city. You can, there's various, all of our event calendars are on the city, so you can see the events that happen throughout the year. All of the information about the commissions and minutes of commission meetings, minutes of city council meetings. I mean, anything you want to know about the official part of what's going on in the city, it's all available on the website. And probably if I were you and I wanted to know more about what's happening in Litchfield Park, I would cheat, and I would sign up on the website for we call them email blasts, or it's informational blasts. And what you get is anytime anything of interest is going to happen in the city, we send out an email to everybody who's signed up on that site. And so you will see the kinds of things that are happening all the time in the city because you'll receive the emails. So that's what I would recommend you do.
Great. We do have some agents who do some commercial. So if they have a client who's looking to locate or relocate into Litchfield Park, is it just easier for them to pop into City Hall or do a phone call or email? How would you advise that commercial agent to initially get a hold of the city for the best information the quickest?
It's probably just as easy to come into City Hall. I mean, we have our staff is generally there, and it's available for you anytime you want to come in. I don't know in terms of on the website that you're going to find a lot of information that will necessarily help you if you have a commercial client. Yeah. I would recommend you come and take a look at, just bring the client out and see the space, because what you're going to see is there's almost no place to put that client. I mean, literally there is no space in Litchfield Park. If you want to come in and there's one rental office building that's in the downtown area, And other than that, if something comes up, it gets rented immediately. So I'd bring people in and just look at the activity, look at the how much business activity is being done in these commercial areas, and then if they're interested in locating there, you're going to have to watch for opening. I mean, we're not going to see that through the city. It's going to go. It'll be through your type of websites.
Great. And lastly, what's the best way for an interested member of WeMAR to get involved with the city, making Litchfield Park the best it can be, particularly if they're residents there, but if they just have people who want to live there, they want to show that property, they like that city, how can our members help promote that?
Again, I think you have to get in, you have to bring your clients to the city and start looking at where you might be interested in, whether it's commercial or residential. I mean, they're just literally, when stuff that's desirable goes on the market, whether it's to rent for commercial or it's to buy as residential or to rent as residential, it goes very, very quickly. I mean, stuff is just it's not on the market a long time. So if you don't know that it's coming up or you haven't already taken your people there ahead of time and you're looking for something, where you understand what is it they're looking for and in what part of the city are they looking, there are some areas where you're gonna, like in the Greens, there are some homes available in the Greens, but it's not very many, and they don't stay up a long time. No. So you have to stay in touch with, in the city itself. That's number one. If it's longer term commercial, if you have people who come out there and say, this would be a good place to do business a year from now, or a year and a half from now, then you should let us know, because we're interested in talking to you about the city center. Or we'll get you involved with the people who own the land that are developing the land at Camelback and Dysart, or Camelback and El Mirage. So those are, if you have customers or clients that are interested in those, you really need to get a hold of us so that we can start having you talk to the right people, because all that's in the process of being planned.
Terrific. All right, thank you. Thank you so much for coming. We appreciate your time. This has
my
been
pleasure.
Wonderful, great information, great help. And thank you for coming as well. And we'll see you hopefully at our candidate meet and greet on June 26th. If not, our next event after that is the Government Affairs Advisory Council. Check wemargad.org for our next events. Thank you very much. Thank you so much.